Have you ever sat down to do something that you knew was important? Like something like, I want to spend some dedicated time with God and His Word, or maybe you want to have a really important, intentional conversation with your kid. And then all of a sudden, it seems like the whole world is in your brain demanding your attention right this second, right? You want to sit down and have that conversation, and your phone has been silent for hours. And all of a sudden, ding, somebody liked a post that you posted in 2017. Or ding, your Amazon package is just like 8 stops away. Or ding, your credit card statement is ready. And that's the last thing that you need to see when you are trying to feel spiritual, right? It happens to all of us. We get stuck into things that are urgent, that demand our attention instead of things that are important. And we wind up looking at that thing, right? And the next thing that we wind up doing is we wind up down the road, right? We look at that post, we wind up scrolling down. The next thing you know, we spent 40 minutes watching a guy build a hut out of mud. And if we ever find ourselves stranded in the middle of nowhere with a GoPro, man, we are ready. But other than that, it is just absolutely useless, right? It happens to all of us that we get stuck in those things. Now, you might look at somebody and go, oh, I bet they're good at time management. I bet nobody thinks that I'm good at time management. You might say, are you good at time management? I'm like, no, I'm not good at time management. Here's my unmanaged life management approach. The important thing, I should do that, right? The urgent thing, I'm gonna do that, right? The random thing, I will now dedicate my life to that. That is pretty much exactly how we unmanaged manage our life. Without any checks and balances, we have a tendency to focus on what is urgent and demands our attention rather than what we know is important. And important winds up being the thing that we're like, yeah, maybe I'll get to that. Urgency demands our attention. It screams loud. It's constant, like, pay attention to me now. It's like a toddler who now knows that he's not the center of attention, and then all of a sudden screams out loud. Meanwhile, the important thing is like our grandma sitting in the corner, quietly knitting and saying, hey, I'll be here when you remember that I'm important, right? And our lives are like that. Our lives are lived in the tension between what we think is urgent and what we know is important. Our lives are lived in this tense balance between what demands our attention and what quietly whispers for our attention. We live our lives in that tension between what's urgent and what's important. Most of the time, what we do is we pour our life into what's urgent, don't we? The thing that screams the loudest for our attention, the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, that's the thing that demands our attention all the time, and we wind up pouring our life into it. And we think it's productive, right? Because, it sneaks up on us all the time, doesn't it? It sneaks up on us at home when we're like, I know I need to spend time with the kids. But right now I need to return this text message. And what we intend to communicate is that I'll get to you when I get this thing out of the way and that I can give my attention to you fully. But what we wind up telling our kids when we do that is that you are less important than this text message I have to reply to right now, right? We wind up getting stuck in the urgent because it sneaks up on us. We do it at work too, right? We're overwhelmed by a project that we know needs to be done, but we don't know what to do or how to do it. And we're like, I don't know how to get started on it. So what do? We clean out our inbox instead. Or we spend all day cleaning out our lap drawer and organizing our work around the desk, right? Sneaks up on us in all of our lives, even in our spiritual lives. I know that I need to spend time alone with God, but right now I'm so busy. I'm so if I could just hit that snooze button one more time, I'll be fully rested. I know I will, right? And so many times it's the same thing with all of our lives, right? I know that I need community so that I could have a growing and real relationship with God and with other people, but I can't afford to be in that because I'm so busy right now, or I can't afford to be on mission with God and on a team. Because right now I'm so overwhelmed by all the things I got to do. If I get one more thing, I'm going to be overwhelmed. But here's the reality. Often Often, urgency is really a lie that intends to distract us from what's important. Often what happens is urgency runs in and screams, look at me, I'm right here. Can't you see me? Can't you see we need to focus our attention on that? Because it wants to disguise itself as important. And important things quietly whisper for our attention, while the urgent things scream for our absolute reaction in the moment. Now, there's a pretty well-known story in Scripture that deals with this tension that we all live in. And I got to be honest with you, when I read it, I almost cringe a little bit, because there is a reality that most Christians and lots of pastors have kind of painted this story to make one person out so that she's not such a great character in the story. And I think we miss it. Give you a little bit of background. Jesus has his face set on the cross, the most single important thing of his entire life. It's literally the reason that he stepped into humanity. When we celebrate Christmas because the God of heaven didn't consider equality with God something that he had to hold on to, but instead set it aside and took on the very nature and the form of a servant and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. The God of the world, he stepped into our life. John 3:16 says, because he so loved the world, he so loved you, he so loved me, that he stepped out of heaven and became one of us, moved into the neighborhood and understands where we're at. Jesus had his face set on the cross, but that didn't mean that he didn't have other very important things that mattered a lot to him. He had his face set on the cross, but he made time for what was important in his life. There was a little village called Bethany, and Bethany seems to be the place where lots of his story kind of circles around. He had three very close friends that were really, really important to him: Martha, Mary, a man named Lazarus. They were siblings, Martha, Mary, and this man named Lazarus. Now, sometimes when you hear it said, you usually hear Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, right? But really, Martha is the primary person in the family. Martha is always listed first when you look in Scripture. Martha is regarded as the head of the household. Now, that's an odd thing, because of all the three of those siblings, she's not a male. Lazarus is almost always listed last. Martha is listed first because she's the primary person in the household. Probably it's widely regarded that their parents had passed away already, and that as the oldest, she was in charge of the home. Martha's house is where Jesus often landed: Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And most of the time when we tell this story, we kind of make Martha out to be a villain. It's really kind of a mess, because everybody was coming to her house, and she was mainly responsible to make sure that this was a great experience. Now listen, it's not a lot like our culture. This is different in many ways, because it fell as a responsibility socially and even morally to Martha to own the responsibility of entertaining well. This isn't just women's work. This isn't just something that's kind of like, oh yeah, and make sure that there's dinner on the table and make sure that the place looks and smells good. That's not a little bit of a thing. This is a huge responsibility in the family structure, and it's a huge moral responsibility, because Jesus is a rabbi. Entertaining a rabbi in your home was a huge honor. And what Martha was focused on wasn't just kind of making things halfway decent because she likes to focus on those sorts of things. To her, it was a very big deal. And here's what happened, and now you can probably imagine how this happens. Martha is busy getting everything ready because she's a leader. She's making things happen. She's got her eye on the prize. She knows what needs to happen, right? And her little sister, Mary, isn't really being all that helpful. Now, you probably can imagine this. Maybe some of you experienced it a couple of days ago at Thanksgiving, right? You finish up the meal, everybody's kind of doing their thing, right? And there's a few people in the kitchen doing stuff, and there's a few people on the couch watching the game, right? You have a few people on the couch chilling out, leaning back, kind of feeling full and tired, right? And it starts with the gentle, like, sigh, like the, and here doing this by myself, right? And nobody kind of pays attention to the gentle coughs or the clearing of the throat. Nobody pays attention to the disapproving sigh of the tension between the kitchen activity and the living room inactivity. And then it escalates a little bit. You say, hey, babe, would you do this? Or would you do that? Would you get that done? And you get that kind of judgmental, kind of passive, aggressive approach where she's like, yeah, I'll do that. As soon as I get done cleaning up all the dishes and putting all the things away, and as soon as everything's cleared up, I'll do that. I'll be glad to help you out with that, right? It's a little passive aggressive. And then it gets a little more and eventually trades in, right? That's exactly what happened with Martha. She was laser focused on her ethical, moral, social responsibility to make this a great experience. And her sister is sitting down at the feet of Jesus, just hanging out and listening to him. And she's getting frustrated. Remember, she's not just focused on the details. She's not just focused on things that aren't important. What she's doing is very important, and it's critical to this whole day being a success for all of these people, not just for her. And she gets past the clearing the throat, the disapproving sigh. She gets past the snide remarks and the passive-aggressive approach, and she trades in the passive-aggressive for my favorite approach, the aggressive-aggressive. And she goes straight to Jesus, and look at what she says to Jesus. She says, she came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair that to you that my sister just sits there while I do all the work? Hey, would you tell her to come and help me, right? I get it, right? If I'm Martha and I'm doing all the work and somebody else is just chilling, right? You go, hey, Jesus, doesn't it seem a little inequitable, right? That one of us is working really hard and the one of us is just kind of chilling out. Now, here's where we usually make Martha out to be a villain. Like we look at words like this and we're like, well, Martha, come on, give me a break. It's Jesus. Don't you see? But Martha isn't trying not to spend time with Jesus. She's not getting laser focused on the details just because she's sidetracked. What Martha is doing is she's honestly worshiping Jesus. She's trying to do all of the things to make this kind of like experience for Jesus a very good, wonderful experience. And I get it. Some of you are kind of, that's your deal, right? You get zeroed in on those sorts of things. And I understand. And I want you to understand something that's super important. Jesus doesn't hate that Martha is doing the good things. He just points out there's a difference. His response to Martha doesn't make her out to be a villain. He really just talks about Mary. Look what he says. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, I love you, right? I care about you. I hear you. You are seen. What you are doing matters. I just want you to know something. You're worried and upset about all these little details, but there's only one thing that's worth being concerned about. Mary has figured it out. Mary discovered it, and it won't be taken from her. The reality is we all get stuck there, isn't it? Like we try to do the good things, but the most important thing, it gets kind of sidestepped. We try to spend our time doing the things that we can focus on. It's not just about detail people, by the way, right? This isn't about people who get inundated or overwhelmed or overly focused on little tiny things and don't see the big picture. This is the problem that we deal with when we deal with this passage, is that we make this kind of out to be, if you focus on the little things, you're missing the big things. And that is in some ways what we're talking about. But we all do it. And it's not just the people who love the tasks. It's not just the people who get stuck in the little details. It's not just those people. It's all of us. We've all said it. Maybe you've said it even recently, right? Maybe some of these sound like you. I know it's important to be on mission with Jesus. But if I didn't focus on my school or my work right now, I won't be able to be a more valuable part of the mission later. Maybe that was you, maybe yesterday, right? Or maybe it sounds like this. I know that connecting with other Christians is an important part of growing my faith. I know it's important, right? And I know I need it, but there's that word again, right? But all my kids' ball schedule has me feeling like I might pass myself on the road if I had one more thing. Maybe that was you, and maybe that was yesterday, right? Or maybe you're thinking this. Maybe you're saying, I know that spending time with God and his word is important, but there just doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day. And that's the part of us that goes, I know I want to spend time with God. I know I need to be in his word. I know I need to do that. But if I just hit that snooze button one more time, I'm pretty sure I will be fully rested, 9 more minutes of sleep, and I'm good, right? But it's never enough, is it? That big but always becomes, now listen, what Jesus says to Martha about Mary isn't that, Martha, what you're doing is worthless. He doesn't say, Martha, what you're doing is a bad thing. Martha, you're sinful. He doesn't say any of those things. Just like to you, he would never say that your kids aren't important. He would never say that your work or your school isn't important. He would never say that rest is important. In fact, in various places, Jesus and all of the writers of Scripture endorse all of those things. Being a good parent, being a good worker, being a great student, being a person who cares about resting so that you can refuel are all really good things. Just like Martha. What Martha was doing was a really good thing. But here's the problem. Good things become the wrong things when they pull you away from the best thing. And we all need to sit with that for a second, don't we? Good things that we get our minds into, right, become the wrong things when they pull us from the very best thing. And that's where our kids are good things, but they become the wrong thing. They become bad things. They become the wrong things to focus on when they take us away from the best thing. Our work, good thing, right, doesn't become a bad thing. It just becomes the wrong thing to focus on when it takes us away from community, when it takes us away from being on mission. The good things become the bad things or the wrong things when they take us or they distract our attention away from the important things. And that's really the tension that we live in, isn't it? And most of the time we hear talk like this, right? And we're like, you know what? I'm going to focus on the good things, right? I'm going to focus on the important things. I'm going to reprioritize my life. That's what we usually do. But understand something, that we treat this like it's a question to be answered, don't we? I'm prioritizing my life right, or I'm not prioritizing my life right. But the reality is that the journey from urgent to important, the journey from the things that demand our attention to the things that whisper for our attention, the journey from things that seem like they're critical to things that are critical is not a question to be answered. It's a tension that we have to manage. We have to constantly live in a life under tension between what's urgent and demands our attention and what's important and only whispers for it. There are so many things at play for our attention. We have to choose where we give our attention. And what about the things that are urgent, right? They are urgent. They have to be done today. They have to be done at this point. But they shouldn't consume all of our life. And when we treat it like it's a question to be answered, it's no wonder why we don't live in it for very long, right? If we treat it like it's a question to be answered, I'm going to prioritize my life, I'm going to do this, and it winds up being a lot like a New Year's resolution, doesn't it? Right? We flip the switch on to urgent, from urgent to important, and then we go, oh, well, things got out of whack, and we just give up, right? And we flip it on for a few weeks, and then just like our New Year's resolutions, we flip it off in more than just a switch. And I would say if we want to move from urgent to important, if we want to move that way, we've got to stop treating it like it's a question that we need to answer. We have to start treating it like it's a tension that we have to manage. And the first step is very simply this. Don't treat it like a light switch. Cut yourself some slack. You're learning a new way to live. Our whole lives up to this point have been kind of lived on the unmanaged life. The important, I should do that. The urgent, I'm going to do that. The unimportant or the random thing is what we dedicate our life to. And we've got to work to flip that. We've got to work to say, the random thing doesn't get my attention until I have time for it. The urgent thing gets my attention when I've done the important things. Important, and then urgent, and then random. We've got to choose to put our life back in it. But the problem is we've been moving that direction for the entirety of our life. In moving away from it isn't a light switch that we turn on. It's not a question that we answer. It's a tension that we manage, and it's a whole new way to live. So step one, cut yourself some slack, would you? This isn't a switch that you flip on or off. It's a tension that you have to live in and a way that you have to train yourself to live life. And if you're going to treat it like a pass or fail moment in your life, you're only going to flip it on, flip it right back off. Flip it on, flip it right back off. But if we can choose over time to cut ourselves some slack and give ourselves some space to make mistakes, then we can move from urgent to important. I think the second step would probably be to learn to tell the difference, don't you think? Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but man, learning to tell the difference between urgent and important, not simple, is it? Sometimes the things that are urgent and demand our attention, they seem so important. If I don't do this right this very second, somebody's going to be mad at me. If I don't answer this text, they're going to feel like I got the text and didn't matter to them. Or if I don't like that, or if I don't send that happy birthday message, they're gonna think I don't matter. There's always that tension, right? So how do we tell the difference between what's urgent and demanding our attention and what's important and needs our attention? Maybe this will help. It's not a complete list, but I'd say this, that urgent things ask for your reaction and important things ask for your intention. Urgent things ask for your reaction right now. Do it this second. Come on, let's go, right? They demand, right? While important things ask gently for us to pay attention. Maybe you think about it this way, that urgent things drain your energy, right? While important things shape your identity. Urgent things clutter up your day, don't they? While important things clarify your life. Urgent things fight for your attention, and important things fight for your transformation. There's a significant difference between the things that are important right now and the things that are really important for a long time. Maybe one way to kind of do that might be to think in these terms. If it's not going to be important in a month, then it's probably urgent. If it's going to be important 10 years from now, it's probably important. If it's going to be simple and gone, it doesn't matter if I do it in this order or that order. And if it's going to be gone and not important in 3 weeks or a month from now, then it probably is just urgency, screaming like a toddler for our attention. And if it's going to be important that I am involved in it for 10 years, then it probably is something that's important. So just to review where we've been so far. Urgency, moving from urgency to important things, starts with cutting yourself some slack because you're learning a brand new way to live. The second step is learning to tell the difference between what's urgent and what's important. And the third thing is to realize that you're the only person you are responsible for. Could you do this for me? Would you just imagine that you have a 3-foot circle around you, okay? Now you're thinking 3 foot, okay, that's 3 foot this way. No, what I mean is that you have a 3-foot circle starting at the center of your chest. That means you got about 18 inches this way, and about 18 inches this way, and about 18 inches this way, and about 18 inches that way, right? So you have a 3-foot circle around your life. That contains all of the people that you are responsible for. That contains all of, now listen, some of you are thinking, okay, well, I want to put my spouse in this circle and control them. Doesn't fit in there, does it? I want to put my work in here and all my coworkers in here. Can't fit them in there, can you? But you're thinking, I got a little one, and he or she will fit in that little circle. And you're right. You are responsible for that little one. but you're not responsible for all the full-grown adults in your life that are trying to do things a bunch of different ways. One of the easiest things in this whole urgency thing is to think that the way I see things should be the way everybody sees things. And I got to even recognize that there's a little tension in that for me, because I stand up here right now telling you about how you should live your life differently, right? I try my best, right, to point at things that Scripture would agree with me. But at the end of the day, even though I believe without doubt that Jesus would agree with me, that spending time in God's Word is good for you, that being on mission with Jesus is good for you, that being in community with people is good for you. Can I just tell you this? That's just my perspective, and I'm not responsible for you. That's why we as a church, by the way, exist to help you take your next step toward Jesus. All we can do is encourage, resource, make it easy for you to do. But what we can't do is do it for you. Because at the end of the day, there's a 3-foot circle around me, and only people that I'm responsible for fit inside of that. And at my age, ain't no people in this circle. I'm responsible only for me. And part of what happened with Martha and with Mary was that Martha was trying to kind of expand her influence, right? She's a leader. She's the person who takes charge of stuff. And she naturally wanted to say, I see it this way. Everybody else should see it this way. And what it turned out to be was that she was wrong. And she needed to engage introspectively into her life. She needed to start thinking about and Jesus had this wonderful and kind way of entering into the story, didn't he? My dear Martha, I love you. I see you. I hear what you're saying. I know what you're doing is important to you. But can it possibly be that the good thing, making all the arrangements, doing all the stuff, the good thing has become the wrong thing because it took you away from the best thing? Mary found the best thing, right? Sit on the floor with Mary for just a minute and recognize that what she was doing was focusing her attention on the person of Jesus in that one moment. She wasn't just trying to sidestep some work. She wasn't just she was seeing something that no one else seemed to get, and that she was going to focus her attention on it. And really, she wasn't criticizing Martha for it, was she? She wasn't passively coughing, Martha, stop doing that. Pay attention to this, right? She wasn't sighing, oh, Martha, you're so focused on the things, She wasn't being judgmental or mean. She was just saying, hey, look, I'm only responsible for me. Can I just encourage you, if you're on the journey from urgent things that demand your attention to important things that quietly whisper for your attention, just focus on you. Just focus on you and realize that you are only responsible for you. And you have to give everybody else the same grace that you want to be given. Give everybody else the room to figure out what's most important. So step 1, cut yourself some slack. You're learning a brand new way to live. Stop treating life like it's an on-off switch, like it's just a priority list that you got to make, right? And second, learn to tell the difference between urgent and important. And third, remember that you're only responsible for the way you treat things that are urgent and important. And the fourth step, I would say, very clearly, is to develop self-awareness. Self-awareness with Jesus. Now listen, self-awareness is a superpower. And some of you are like, no wonder I've struggled so much with the idea of the urgent things or even the random things getting my attention, because it requires a superpower to get all the way to the other side of it, right? To move the needle at all, it's going to require something that very few of us have, an awareness of ourselves. I got to just be an example, and it's just transparency for me, right? I love to play chess. Now, that may surprise you that I love to play chess, mainly because chess is a thinking man's game, right? And I'm not always thought through, like that's kind of my deal. But what I like to do is play chess, especially before I write a talk like this one. I sit down and I try to put on a chess game, play online, because it helps me engage my brain, helps me think strategically, helps me think about what has to happen first so that something can happen later. And as I organize the way I talk, it helps me kind of get my brain in that wavelength of thinking. Now, the problem is that what is good, right, can very quickly become just something I like to do. It could be a random thing. What turns out to be an important thing at the beginning eventually winds up being a random thing, right? Because at some points, I tend to lean too far into the game and not into just the focused part of it. And I become more focused on winning games than learning to play games so that I can gauge my brain. I shift my focus away from what's important to what's urgent, and ultimately winds up being random because I'm not willing to ask myself some questions. In those moments, I just get wrapped up in it, and it's like a snowball that just kind of rolls down the hill, gets bigger and bigger and more overwhelming and harder to stop because I'm not willing to engage in some level of self-awareness. Now, that's true of all of us. Learning to develop a self-awareness about our actions really isn't about thinking about our actions. It's really about thinking about our motivations. So maybe if you're trying to develop some self-awareness in your life, I want to develop some self-awareness with Jesus, then maybe you start to ask yourself some questions. Like, why am I feeling pressured to do that right now? Why do I think that thing, why do I feel like, cleaning out the junk drawer is the best thing? Am I doing that because it's really important? Or am I doing that because I'm trying to avoid something else? Why am I feeling pressure to do that right now? Or why do I think this is such an important thing right now? Like right now, in this moment, why do I think it's so important to make sure that the cars get washed and that the garage gets organized? Is it really important right now? Or is it just something that I'm trying to avoid another thing? Or maybe I'm just trying to procrastinate? So often, isn't it the truth? That the things that get our attention, the urgent things, they disguise themselves as productivity, don't they? But really all they are is procrastination. Often what happens is the urgent things are just procrastination dressing up like productivity. Like cleaning out our inbox or the lap drawer, getting our things. I do it all the time, and I'm not pointing at you. I'm literally talking to me. Right? I'm literally speaking to my life, and you can not listen if you want. But I have to ask myself, why do I think this is so important right now? And maybe this one, who or what am I trusting right this minute? See, self-awareness isn't something that you can just develop on your own. I mean, it kind of is. You can get a glimpse of it on your own. But really, isn't our urgency sometimes just a matter of trusting certain things? If I don't do this right now, I won't be able to control that later, and I won't be able to control that. If I don't get this done, that person's going to sit around and do nothing. This person's, and we're just trying, isn't it really just trusting ourselves? A lot of times, for me, maybe this is true for you, a lot of times, what I treat as urgent is really just me trying to control my world. And I'm really just trusting me. Instead of saying, God, I want to put you first. You get the lion's share, the best part of my entire life. And you get that first, and everything else will fall into place. It's part of the reason why I believe that God instilled the idea of tithing into church. This isn't a talk about money, but part of the reason why God invites us into tithing is the same reason he invites us into serving on mission with him, being in community with him, spending time with him. Because if we'll put our God first in our money, our life will follow right after it. If we'll spend our time on mission, if we'll invest our relationships in our growth, if we'll invest our mind in his word and our money in his kingdom, God goes, hey, if you'll do the important things, I'll handle the urgent things. It's so easy, isn't it? It's so easy to think that even this you could do without God. You could say, well, self-awareness, isn't that just kind of a pop culture, pop psychology kind of thing? You just got to be aware and you arrange your stuff. And you might think that this is all just without God, but it's not. God invites us into this over and over and over throughout the pages of Scripture. 66 books. Written by 40 different authors, written over a period of 4,000 years. And from the very beginning to the very end, he invites us into this self-reflection. into this self-awareness. Look at this in the book of Psalm. David writes, search me, O God, and know my heart. He says, test me and know my anxious thoughts. Test me. Find out. Remind me of what I'm paying attention to that's urgent. Point out anything in me that offends you. And lead me along paths of everlasting life. Is this not self-awareness? God, would you just work with me in this? Can I invite you into my chaos? Can I invite you into my unmanaged life? And would you help me manage it and put it on the right track? Look at Proverbs. Proverbs says to give careful thoughts to the path of your feet and steadfast in all your ways. Because what you do, what you think, how you feel, it matters. It doesn't just matter to you, it matters to God. Your story, your process of approaching life matters to God because his promise to you is a full and rich and complete and satisfying life. And he knows that it will never happen. He will never be able to give you the life he wants for you in the unmanaged life. So give careful thoughts to the paths of your feet and be steadfast. Make important things the most important things. Good things become the wrong things when they take us away from the very best things. Look at this one. In Galatians, Paul says, pay careful attention to your work. It doesn't say that we shouldn't bother with our work, right? Our work matters. It matters to God. It matters to God, by the way, that you're a great accountant. It matters to God that you're a great factory worker. It matters to God that you're a great mom. It matters to God that you do your job as great as you can. He wants you to shine the light of your good work in the darkness of the world around us. I think Christians should be the very best workers. They should produce the most. People should just constantly scrape and go, I got to hire me one of them Christian people because those people work. He says, when we do that, when we pay attention to our work, we get the satisfaction of a job well done. It gives us part of that full and complete and satisfying life because we're doing what's important when it's important, not just urgent, demanding our attention. Look at this one in Psalm. He says, put me on trial, Lord. By the way, that's an interesting kind of phrase, isn't it? Trial. Like the idea that God would put us on trial and that we would, in the trial, expose all the things that are incongruent in our life. Isn't that how it is? Isn't that what a trial is? Taking one side story and another side story, trying it out and going, yeah, these two stories don't match. So often in our lives, we convince ourselves that what we're doing is important when it's really just urgent. Put me on trial, Lord. Cross-examine me. Push in hard. Ask tough questions. Help me. Because when God cross-examines, it's not about exposing us and making and pointing out our insufficiencies. It's about helping us to test our motives and my heart. Because our motives matter. It exposes who we trust. It exposes what we think. It exposes how we feel. And all of those things are part of what God is promising us when he says, I want to give you a full and rich and complete and satisfying life. Last one in Lamentations, it says, let us examine our ways. Let us test them. And let us return to the Lord. Let us return to the Lord. Turn away from the things that are urgent and demand our attention to the things that are quiet and whisper for our intention. That really might be the tension, isn't it? The difference between attention and intention. Or the difference between what demands from us and what quietly asks for it. That is exactly the push and pull relationship that God wants to have with us. He doesn't want us to just do the right things and check the boxes. He wants to have a journey with us from our unmanaged life to a managed life with him, to a place of self-awareness with Jesus. If you're already a follower of Jesus, then your next step is really just leaning into that. Leaning into what things have your attention when other things need your intention. Walking with God and letting him in to cross-examine your life and expose things and going, yes, that thing I do is incongruent with what I want to become. Maybe that's where you're at today. You just lean into that relationship. But if you're here today, joining us online, and this whole Jesus thing's not your story, can I just tell you this? There is no other way to find the full and rich and complete and satisfying life apart from that kind of push and pull relationship with the God that stepped out of heaven to give you life. It's an amazing thing. And I could just challenge you at this. Today might be a really great day for you to begin a relationship with Jesus. Can I just tell you how to do that? There are one of a couple different ways. The first way is if you want to talk about it this week, you can scan the QR code that's on the chair below you. You can go to ourjourney.news. On the bottom corner, you're going to see a little orange dot that says Next Steps. If you click that, you'll see some options. Pick one that best describes you, and let's just talk this week. We'll just connect the dots and talk about how we can help you take that step forward. Or maybe if you want to stick around after service, I'll hang out over here by this baptistry, or you could show up at church next week, and I'd love an opportunity to talk face to face with you and help you take your next step toward Jesus. Or here's this. If somebody's been inviting you to Journey, or maybe they invited you this morning, or they invited you a few weeks ago and you've just settled in, that person cares a lot about you. In fact, it may very well be that you're the one person in their life that they're praying for, and they took the risk of inviting you because they care about you. And you can ask that person how to move forward in your relationship with Jesus. They may not have all the answers, by the way. They're just like you. They're just one beggar showing another beggar how to find food, right? But what they can do is help you find someone who can help you take your next step toward Jesus, whatever way you choose to do it. The most important thing is that you push away all the urgent things that are screaming for your attention and lean in to the quiet whisper of the important things that demand your intention.